So every time you indulge you put your mask of imposter syndrome. Imagine you're at work, someone say, oh, great job, you did well. And you're like, oh my God, that's not true. At this moment, you become self-aware, you write it down. You write exactly the scene that happens.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the KTS Success Factor podcast for women, where we talk about challenges senior female leaders face in being happy and successful at work. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah E. Brown. My guest today is Coline Monsarrat. She is a passionate author, driven by a mission to help others thrive. She weaves captivating stories that transcend boundaries. Whether through her insightful nonfiction work or the adventure young adult book series, Aria and Liam, she imparts valuable wisdom that inspires readers to overcome challenges and embrace their potential. Her new book, You Are Not an Imposter: Overcoming Imposter Syndrome, Unlock Your True Potential So You Can Thrive, offers a powerful and personal exploration of this all too common condition. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Welcome, Coline.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure. So tell me a little bit about Aria and Liam. What are they? Who are they?
So Aria and Liam are two kids, and they actually have a very superpower. They travel back to history and they save the day. They really save a famous king, queens, but as well scientific people. And with this book series, I really wanted, because nowadays I've got an issue. People find history boring, a lot of kids. And I've always been passionate about history. So I say, okay, let me make it fun, very adventurous. And I think we can learn so much with history. A lot of wisdom are lying events of the past. So I also wanted to share with kids things that they can learn around psychology, but everything immersed inside a story.
Wow. Interesting. So what age group are you writing to in this series?
9 to 13 years old.
Wow. And you previously had a corporate job, right?
Yes, exactly. I was the global marketing manager for two niche French luxury brands. So I was living actually in Dubai. The head office was there for marketing, and I rise up the corporate ladder there. It was a very exciting journey because the brands were quite small when I took them, and we grow them globally, opening new markets, a lot of marketing, sales, distribution. I learned so much, but at some point I realized that was not my true calling. Actually, I was very stubborn. I stayed in this job way too long in a company where I did not share the same value. And it actually made me so sick. I almost died in 2020. I was working crazy hours, living with imposter syndrome, so overworking to try to prove the other, but mostly myself, that I was not so bad. And despite growing, in responsibilities, having a team, I felt so much like a fraud in my job that I was living with people pleasing, self-doubt, low self-esteem. And it reached such a point where my body just broke down. I did a sepsis in January 2020. And in the space of a month, find out that the genetic disease that I had, that I thought was just like a small allergy, actually led to the destruction of my pancreas. And so I was diabetic, had kidney issue, and went through 10 surgeries over the course of 2 years, still working. That's when I decided, I say, Coline, there is something wrong inside your heads. So I went back to school and study psychology at the same time.
And so that led you to leave the corporate job?
it took 2 years. My entire journey where I worked on myself, find out about imposter syndrome, all the belief that we build inside our brand. So I went back to university. I did an online program with the University of Louisiana. And at the same time, I was still working. But because it was COVID, I had a global job. So markets were still open, but at different times. So we had more time for ourselves. So it gave me time to study. And it's really at the end of my journey, one event with my CEO where he questioned some things inside the office that I realized, like, who the heck does he think he is? Because it did not match what was happening. And suddenly my syndrome dropped down and I said, I quit. And 2 months later, I started to learn how to write a book because I had never written in my life. I took a risk. I said, let me test if I'm still feeling like an imposter. Went on into another career.
So it all points out the high cost of staying in a job that's not a good fit for you.
I will have died. Literally, I reached a point, to give you an idea. I had 10 surgery, including 3 major ones. I lost the ability to have a kid. And for the last surgery, which was like a month recovery normally, I took 4 days off. I was in my hospital bed, taking phone call, organizing, because we were not enough people in the office and I couldn't let other people down. And at some point, 2 months later, I started to feel really depressed, wishing to be in a hospital bed rather than at work, when I've been always someone passionate about working. And at this moment, I said, I can't die for this job. It's not worth it. And it's so easy when you've got a good title, you've reached a certain level. It's so easy to stay, clench, because if you change, you're going to have to start back from scratch, literally. Even if you don't realize a lot of things you've learned in the past will be so helpful for you. So you actually don't really start from scratch. But it's easy to stay clinched into it. But at some point, my health was deteriorating so much that the universe was literally telling me, now, Coline, you need to get out.
Okay. Well, you brought up the topic of imposter syndrome several times. So what is it? How do you define it?
So imposter syndrome, it's not a psychological disorder. Let me be clear. It's not registered in the DSM-5, but it's a syndrome that was studied and discovered in the 1970s. And at the beginning, it was really studied to high successful women, female leaders. It's really the feeling of feeling like fraud. So we mostly talk about it in the professional settings because it's the most obvious, but I found that research so it can spread in other areas of your life. And it's literally, despite having success, people telling you how much they like your job, you do not believe it and you feel like a fraud. And so slowly you just start to having the fear that everyone is going to find out that you're actually not that good and everything is going to crash down. And usually it starts a lot with self-doubt, because if you don't doubt yourself, you will not feel obviously like an imposter. And after, you've got a lot of behaviors that come from it, like people pleasing, low confidence, low self-esteem. And it becomes like a second skin. And that's what is dangerous. It's because it becomes a habit, another identity for you. So you so much into it that even when someone is going to say to you, stop feeling like an imposter, like you're doing great at your job, you're still going to say, no, that's not true. When are they going to realize? And that's the dangerous part. And it's going to eventually destroy your health, and you're going to sabotage yourself just so you are right, So it's a very dangerous syndrome. When on the spectrum, you're way too high. It's always good to have a little bit, especially as business leader. I executive woman, it's always good to have a little bit, because otherwise you're just a fool. If you make a mistake, you will not realize. So it pushes you to learn and to grow. But when it goes too far, that's becoming very dangerous.
So you said it starts with self-doubt. Is this like normal self-doubt and it just gets blown up and all out of proportion? Or does it start with something different?
So what they found, researchers found, it's most of the time the roots come from childhood. And it's not the self-doubt directly. It's usually you have the most common ones, because you have different roots, obviously, but the most common ones are either certain personality traits, such as perfectionism, high neuroticism. Perfectionist people have a tendency to really feel like an imposter, because for them, the job is never perfectly done, even if we don't have the same definition of perfection, all of us. And the other, most of the time, it's either societal expectation or family dynamics. So, for example, you have more imposter syndrome in women than men, especially in fields where you don't have a lot of women. Or you have also high imposter syndrome in academics, artists, and high position, because the pressure is so high and the expectations are so high that you have a tendency to have higher rates of imposter syndromes, and also underrepresented groups because they lack representation.
You mentioned a little bit about the cost of it in your own situation, your own journey in that situation, but in general, what does this syndrome cost women?
So for women, salary, money. Because to tell you my personal story, I had a very good job. I was paid 50%, sometimes less than other people that didn't have the same level of position. But why? Because I didn't dare to go ask for more. Because even if I wanted to go and negotiate and have a better one, I had a belief in my head, a voice that was telling me, no, but Coline, it's better in the end to not be paid too much, because when they're going to realize that you're just a fraud, will be less, they're more likely to keep you because you don't cost that much. So the first thing, it's self-sabotage in terms of money, salary. So if you are a business owner, you might not ask right price, fair price, because the fear of being found out is so strong that you rather, ask less. So that's the first cost. And after, the second biggest one, we talk a lot about manifestation, how you can visualize and your wild desire will come true. It works both ways. Self-prophecy, and this has been proven, actually can happen, because you're going to put yourself in a mindset that if you say every day to yourself that you're not good at your job, that you're adopting all your decision, at some point you're going to make mistakes. Mm-hmm. This is just the human brain and how you open for it. So that's the biggest cost.
So how did you find out that you were being paid 50% less?
It was not such a big company and a lot of turnover. So when people leave, they actually tell you, and it was a frustration, rumination. It caused me so many sleepless nights, while in fact, it was my choice. Yes, because when I entered the company, I was in a very lower position and I rose so quickly that I was promoted every few months that it did not keep up. But it was my choice to stay. And that's what I say. My mindset back then and my boss was the same. So we did not help each other out, clearly. We were like, if we are doing a good job, they will raise naturally without us asking our salary. And that's a mistake women do a lot. Men do it less frequency. And actually that's never, like almost never the case. And other people were telling me, yeah, but that's not fair what they do to you. At the end, I was like, that's me who stayed. I should not have accepted it. I should have stand up. I should have faced my fear instead of ruminating and waiting for other people to see my worth. And I think it's so hard in life to face your fear, especially at the beginning. So my biggest advice will be, do not ruminate. It's not going to change anything. and you're just going to build resentment that is going to be very costly for your health. Resentment really damage your body in a hard way. And go after what you want and do not fear to ask and stand for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So we've established the cost in terms of money and we've established the cost in terms of health. Is there a cost in terms of emotional? Hi, this is Sarah Brown again, the host of the KTS Success Factor podcast for women. I hope you are enjoying this episode and gaining some tips and inspiration on how you can be happier, more successful, and experience less stress at work. If you would like to learn more about how you can empower the women in your organization to do the same, simply click on the show notes to see how you can connect with me. As an added bonus for my podcast guests, you will see how you can book 30 minutes with me to explore how you can implement a scalable self-coaching program for the women in your organization. Simply visit bookachatwithsarahebrown.com. Now back to this informative episode.
Imagine every day living in stress of being found out. The human body is not made for this amount of stress. Like we should always stay in homeostasis, so a very balance. And the problem nowadays, it's a lot of people will go into lower level of stress than when we used to be hunter and gatherer and we have a lion and our body starts to secrete a lot of cortisol, blood sugar rise for us to fight. This helps when we are in a wild, dangerous situation. But in modern society, the problem is we live this every day. We have a huge amount of stress. And the problem with health, and I live with health issues since I'm 5 years old, so I'm quite accustomed to this field. It's a lot of time, the moment we realize the consequences, it's already too late. So that's a big issue with health. So a lot of stress in your life, it's going to damage your relationship. It's going to put your body into too much stress that it's going to cause you disease. And when you're going to be diagnosed, you're going to face like the moment everything crumbled, like in the space of a month, I lost all my life as I knew it. I became diabetic, had one kidney issue. You never want to have a kidney issue. No pancreas. And I was like, how the heck did I end up in this situation? And after when I looked the 4 or 5 years before, I was sleep deprived. I was in constant stress. I did not believe and trust myself. Of course, my body is going to react. So it's important to wake up early so you don't pay the same cost, because trust me, you do not want health issue. This is
Okay. So why did you want to write a book about it?
so after the entire journey I went through, I really felt compelled. I cannot very explain it. Like one evening, I said to myself, I need to share the journey if it can help other. And so I started to write the day after, and the book came out. But I'm not a coach. I don't sell seminar classes or nothing. I just wanted that if my story can help other. The cost was so high for me that I think I could not write this book down and share all the science I've learned. I became very passionate about neuroscience and psychology. And so for me, it was very important to write it down. And if it can help one person change their life and their behavior and take control of their life, because when you live in fear, or I don't like to use the word victim because I never considered myself to be a victim of anything. But sometimes I was acting like a victim, like I had no control, a little bit like learned self-helplessness, like you think that you have no control about things that happen to you when you clearly have. And so that was my entire goal, really to help others, because once you remove this mask, you might have others. I'm still working on myself on other psychological issue that I want to fix. But little by little, your life starts to shine, and you have one life. So it's better to live it fully, than living it like an imposter.
Do you have a perspective on how many women who are suffering from imposter syndrome know they're suffering from imposter syndrome?
So the data we have, it's when they ask people, do you feel like an imposter? And for women, the last one that was done in 2019 was 82% of women
Wow.
say they do. They did feel. So it doesn't mean they now feel like an imposter, but at one time in their life. It's not studied a lot. This syndrome is really not studied a lot. We have usually you realize that you feel like an imposter, but strangely enough, your brain doesn't want to change it, because usually, as I was saying, the roots come from, most of the time, especially when it's high in the spectrum, comes from childhood. When you have built belief in childhood and you are an adult, those beliefs are so anchored in yourself that it takes time to erase them. It takes a lot of self-awareness and daily action. So even if a lot of women feel like imposters, they don't always think that they can fix it. You kind of, it becomes your identity. It really becomes, and as women, and I'm writing an article right now about that, we are educated very differently than men. So the other challenge that women face, it's the way we think we have to act. So they've done very interesting studies. Like they took students, you have men and female students, they give them a test. And after the test, they ask the students, okay, how did you do? Most men, they say, oh, I did well. That went very, very well. Most women, how they react? They started to say, I'm not so sure if I did good. I will see, but I'm really not so sure. And what they found, it's as women, we learn from a very early age that we should not brag. It's not well seen for a woman to say, I did this is my award, this is my accomplishment. People, and when I say people, it's men and women, and I was very shocked to find out this, even women judge very harshly other women that brag. So we learn from an early age that it's better to stay very humble, when men learn that it's better to brag. So it's going to add up even more in the imposter syndrome, because if you want to get rid of it, you're suddenly going to say to yourself, yeah, but I cannot brag. I cannot do this because the crowd is going to turn on me. So as a society, we also need to keep working on changing those societal expectations to be more gender neutral, and let a woman say to, like, most women that have PhD will not say that they have PhD, because they're going to be scared to be like, to brag. While men, they will write it in front of their house if they can. So it's something we also need as a society to change the way we educate kids and be more gender neutral.
So if I'm a woman and I recognize that I've got any degree of imposter syndrome, what do I do?
So the first step is to become self-aware on a daily basis. So every time you indulge you put your mask of imposter syndrome, imagine you're at work, someone say, oh, great job, you did well. And you're like, oh my God, that's not true. At this moment, you become self-aware, you write it down. You write exactly the scene that happens. Because by becoming aware, every time you have a bad habit, you can do it even with other bad habits. It's important to, every time you indulge in it, to be aware to write it down. After, what I do, it's I go back 2-3 days later in my journal and I write down all the narrative I need to change, because pretty much what you need to do, it's create new neural pathway in your brain to change your behavior. So by writing them down, and you say, for example, they told me my work was very good today, but that's not true. I did not do this. You write next to it, actually, they were right. You change the narrative. I could improve because let me be clear. I think we can always improve, but we need to learn how to receive criticism and how to be able to distinguish a good work, how you can improve it without blaming ourselves. There is a big difference. So rewrite the narrative. Yeah, I did well. Maybe next time I do this. And for every behavior, if you do people pleasing, for example, to cover up for your behavior, you're usually going to feel very mad to have said yes, especially in the workplace. You said yes, it's done. So what you do, you write down, I said yes, I didn't want. Why did I say yes? And be honest with yourself. Did you really say yes because you wanted to help someone else? Or did you say yes because you wanted another person to love you or to recognize you or cover up? Be honest with yourself without judgment, without blaming, so you can change your behavior the next time. And slowly you need to take action. You know why the self-help industry is so lucrative? It's because a lot of people read a lot, but do not take action. So take action after. Face your fear one by one. Today, I will say no. If someone asks me and I cannot do this extra work that they come to ask me. Slowly and slowly, your brain, by rewriting the narrative and taking action, it will start to develop new neural pathway. It will be uncomfortable at the beginning. It's every time like this with change, but slowly and slowly it will be easier to do.
Okay. So let me summarize what I think you said. The first one is to be aware of what you're doing and write it down at that point in time. And then you go back after a period of time and really analyze what you're saying to yourself and the brain and rewrite that. You're essentially rewriting your self-talk, right?
Yeah, exactly. Reprogram.
Okay. And then you got to do something with it. So just starting to take small steps. And my guess is small steps every day. And eventually you build up the muscle.
Exactly. If you're too scared at the beginning, do it one time a week. But once you will be self-aware, it will be harder for you to indulge in the behavior over time, because you will really say to yourself, I'm very stupid. And that's why self-awareness a lot to take action.
Okay, so we've talked about what it is, and we've talked about the cost of it and where it comes from, and 3 steps that people can take to actually begin to counteract it. Coline, is there anything that I didn't ask you that I should have to help my audience understand imposter syndrome better?
You've asked a great question. What I want people to take on, it's to never forget that your quality of your life will depend to how you perceive situation and events. And your brain is not always your friend. So that's the first thing that a neuroscientist will tell you. It's to stop believing your brain is your friend. Your brain is only goal is to survive and reproduce. So you can have a lot of belief inside your head that you believe, no, my brain will give it to me because they know that it's true. No, they're not true. So it's going to be uncomfortable, the journey. Don't blame yourself. Have fun and embrace the change. And really what I want to emphasize, I know nowadays we want quick fix. We want something, take a pill and it will work. I'm not going to lie. It took me 2 years. Am I ashamed that it took me 2 years? No, because it's for a lifetime of happiness. So really don't blame, start your journey and live your life, and most importantly for me, you need to live your true purpose if you want to live long and happy.
Coline, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for having me.
Thanks for listening to the KTS Success Factor podcast for women. If you like what you are hearing, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate us, and leave a review. And if you would like more information on how we can help women in your organization to thrive, then go to www.sarahebrown.com. You can sign up for our newsletter, read show notes and learn more about our podcast guests, read my blog, browse through the books, or contact us for a chat. Goodbye for now.